the fifth session of today's seminar, and this session is on China's growing presence in India's neighborhood. And we are having three speakers in this session. First will be Asha Mathew, and she will be speaking on China's growing influence in South Asia and its consequences for India.
My topic is China's growing influence in Southern Asia, consequences for India. Before I go into my topic, I would just want to defend my topic with regard to what Professor Nalapat talked about. I would agree that the ports and the city centers China is building around India is for the economic reasons, but the anti-India activities that China is doing in the region with the help of Pakistan clearly highlights its intent against India in the region. So, which is why I think it's very important, to talk about this, and also with regard to India, being an Indian, it's China's activities in the region to a large extent even constrain our growth as a country. So, which is why I thought this was an important topic to look into. So, as you all know, the very term dragging factor has been drawing global attention in the past decade or so. So, China's economic and military expansion, along with its growing influence in international affairs, makes it a significant player in today's world. And China's growing influence in Southern Asia has become a great matter of concern for India. China is seen clearly maneuvering its every step such that countries within the region likely to break the balance between the two giants and tilt towards China, which will in turn be a great threat for India. So, the format of my presentation will be this: China's Southern Asia policy, India's neighborhood policy, China's growing influence in the region, and what is the future trajectory. So, going into China's Southern Asia policy, Southern Asia has been of importance in China's foreign policy for varied reasons, but the fact remains that East Asia and Southeast Asia top the list in terms of priority. But the trends in the past couple of years show China's growing interest in Southern Asia as to how China has been investing a great deal of money and resources in the region. So I will be dividing it into three issues. You have the political issues, economic issues, as well as the strategic issues. Coming to the political issues, a number of factors again shape China's strategy towards Southern Asia. One is the Tibet issue. The Tibet issue is something that's been very close to China's heart. China needs to make sure that the neighboring countries do not become a home to elements that would create trouble for the Chinese mainland using the Tibet card. This also explains China's close engagement with countries like Nepal amidst the political instability that exists within the country. Next is China's boundary disputes in Southern Asia are yet another matter of concern for the country. We've also seen as to how over the years China has begun to settle most of its boundary issues within the region except for that of India and Bhutan. Next is economic issues. As you all know that Southern Asia is like one of the most emerging markets in the world, and China has already made use of that opportunity to become one of the largest trading partners in the region. China has enhanced its trade relations with both bilaterally and multilaterally using SAARC as a forum. Coming to the strategic issues, again, one of the major objectives of China's grand strategy has been to restrain constraints of any sort in the region. As Arvind sir had said, it's one of its major agendas is a unipolar Asia and a multipolar world. So, I wouldn't say China considers India as a threat, but China would do what it can in its hands to ensure that no other country in the region would rise or in any way question its legitimacy in the region. And China has been using the help of India's neighbors in the region to carry out this strategy of theirs. The other interests include access to the Indian Ocean, which currently serves as a playground for many external players in the current times. Keeping in mind that the ocean also serves as a trade route for China's oil from West Asia to the Straits of Malacca, it becomes necessary for them to secure the lines of communication. And then the recent visit by Chinese Defense Minister, or the frequent bilateral visits between the countries between China and India, also you can look at it from a larger ambit of the strategic rivalry between US and China. So this comes again after the visit of the US Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta to India, where he brought out the whole aspect of how the US considers India to be a linchpin of their grand strategy in Asia Pacific. So that is yet another reason for where India again gains prominence in China's books. And coming to India's neighborhood policy, you all are aware as to how Southern Asian countries are known to share an ancient and common history as well as culture. But the fact that it is varied in nature, the colonial period has clearly facilitated a division, including the partition. And ever since this division, the region has lost that feeling of oneness, and it's more of a feeling of otherness. Which contributes to a large extent to the divide in the region. And you also see as to how India's rise in terms of military and economy in the past 1 decade has certainly created an asymmetric balance in the region, giving it a dominant position. Though countries like Pakistan still claim to be having achieved strategic parity with India. This domineering role that countries in the region perceive India to play has led to the anti-Indian feelings in the region, has contributed to that. And again, looking into how India has contributed and has responded to the issues in the region, you see that India's response has basically been a response because of the behavioral pattern of its neighboring countries. As I mentioned before, the anti-Indian feeling. So sometimes India has to be silent, and also you have to keep in mind that India is the only country in the region which has commonalities with other countries. So there also tends to come up domestic politics, like you've seen in the case of the Sri Lanka-India issue. And India has again brought out a number of doctrines, like the Gujarat doctrine, which you all know is non-reciprocity. Indira doctrine again this doctrine was brought out, traced to the Sri Lankan crisis again in 1988, and it basically laid down that India would consider the presence or influence of an external power in the region as a threat. But India's justification for the policy was an attempt to insulate the region from adverse effects of Cold War. Was what the justification was, but the neighbors viewed it as a policy to abolish any challenge to India's regional position. And India has faced a lot of challenges, but has been trying to accommodate interests because, as I mentioned before, because of the anti-Indian feelings in the region. Coming to now China's growing influence in Southern Asia. Again, as I mentioned, the first is encircling of India, setting up of ports and sligging centers. So you see the stars indicate the various ports that are there around India. So you have ports in Sippe, Myanmar, in Sri Lanka, Chittagong, Bangladesh, Godar in Pakistan, and they're planning to build a dry port in Nepal, Tatopani, which is pretty close to Indian borders again. And there have always been suspicions about China using its facilities for both civilian as well as strategic purposes, and hence the setting of these ports and bases at nodal locations clearly highlights China's strategy of encircling India. The next is the Sino-Pak nexus. That again is one of the most enduring military partnerships in Southern Asia and is one of India's biggest challenges. As you all know, China's all-weather friendship with Pakistan clearly exemplifies this. Pakistan was one of the first few countries to publicly recognize China's to recognize People's Republic of China and break off relations with the ROC in 1950s. And China has offered support of all sorts to Pakistan. China has assisted and contributed to Pakistan's nuclear program, which was one of the biggest threats to India. There was even a quote by the former Pakistani ambassador to the US, Hussein Haqqani, was even quoted saying that for China, Pakistan is a low-cost secondary deterrent to India. For Pakistan, China is a high-value guarantor of security against India. So again, with that one statement, it's very clear as to what their intentions are. Coming again to growing trade relations, as I had mentioned, China is one of the largest trading partners in the region, as well as that of India. And in order to do this, they started building a lot of strategic trade routes within the region. And if you look closely into the trade routes, you would notice that most of the trade routes built in the region are ones that there are easy access to the Indian land, to Indian mainland. Even if it is with the case of Bangladesh or in the case of Nepal, the porous border with Nepal, you will see how most of the railroads and the rail lines which were built have easy access to Indian border and Indian mainland. And then talking about China, largest supplier of weapons in the in the region, I would like to collaborate that with this point. You will also see during the time of crisis, I'm going to bring in the case of Myanmar, though it does not necessarily fall into the purview of Southern Asia. The fact that it borders India and China makes it a region of significance for us. The fact that when Myanmar was undergoing the whole political instability, and when the country was slapped with economic sanctions by the West, that was when you saw China support the region, support the country, and provide arms. And the same was seen during the Sri Lankan crisis in the region, when the West had again slapped embargoes on Sri Lanka because of the human rights problem. Again, you saw China helping the country with weapons. So you see as to how their whole aspect of moral neutrality tends to give them the benefit in the region. Whereas when an issue of human crisis comes, India is one of those countries which will have to go along with the West. So that again, gives them more credit, gives them an advantage in the region. And yet another thing that you see is setting up of Confucius centers around the borders and across the globe to promote their culture. Just to give you a small brief on statistics, it even said that there were almost 121 Confucius centers on the borders of India, especially from the Nepal, using the Nepal border. And there have also been proposals as to how these centers are used to promote again anti-India activities in the border. So I would clearly say that though China does not really perceive India to be a threat, but China is doing everything in its control to make sure that it has its leverage in the region. And the fact that India's neighborhood is not really in India's benefit can bring India in a very bad situation. So coming to the future trajectory, at the regional level, as I mentioned, China seems more determined than ever to constrain the rise of India with the help of India's neighbors. While this largely serves the purpose of China, it is a major loss for India, and an unfriendly neighborhood will definitely cost India its rising power status. India hence should work towards adopting a neighborhood policy that would to a certain extent, it would have to ignore its own personal gains, but ensure that the other country gains more only because of the power asymmetry in the region. And India should also reassure countries in the region that India's growth is only going to benefit the region, and India is a peaceful power in the making. And there is yet another scenario, that is a close Sino-Indian partnership, as you all heard Professor Manipal talk about. So if that were to happen with regard to trade in the next 3-4 years, it would again be a plus for both the sides. As you all heard, a lot of scholars bring out the concept of how the current 21st century belongs to Asia. So if that dream were to be fulfilled, you need the you need to see these two countries getting along well. So if like I mentioned, if that were to happen, it would definitely benefit both the region as well as the continent as a whole. But for that to happen, again, China has to take efforts on its part to ensure that it does not engage in activities that can prove to be a threat for India. And if one were to again look at the larger geopolitical picture, a stable Sino-Indian relation is in China's interest in order for China to compete with the US. The fast-growing relations between the US and between India, Southeast Asian countries and the US is definitely a matter of concern for China. And the recent diplomatic steps taken by China clearly highlight this intent. So meanwhile, in such a situation, India will definitely be in a better position if it can try to maintain its strategic autonomy and not really align with either of the two sides. And again, if there are confidence building measures should be established to ensure that the tensions between the two countries will be brought down.
Just an observation from the map which you had put up there. Actually, it indicated that the Kra Canal project, which is in Thailand, is actually one of the. China had been pushing for it, but as of late it has been shelved because of the rising costs and also a lot of pressure from other countries which do not want China. Because it will totally bypass the Malacca Straits and it will totally hamper the economies of the countries in the Malacca Straits. So they itself also are very opposed to the project. There's a division within Southeast.
It is against China's.
China is for it. Actually, in the 70s, Japan was for it, but it shelved the project. But China is for it now, but it will oppose all these three major economies of Southeast Asia, so they won't allow it to come.
But what does that mean because it's in Thailand, right? So what does that mean to Thai sovereignty? Because having a lot of powers running through its territory, it might turn out to be another Panama. So that's probably why Thailand is resisting it, listening to others, because wouldn't want to let the others intervene overwhelmingly on the issue.
Chinese increasing role in SAARC, what sort of an impact does that have on India, Indo-China relations?
China's role in SAARC again is mainly towards
Sino-Indian relations.
China's role in SAARC again has to do purely with regard to trade. Again, every 2-3 years actually they have these meetings with China, and trade in the multilateral forum is also on a hike as compared to is on a much higher degree than compared to India, even in SAARC. The thing with
his question is that whether China's entry as an observer in SAARC be in Indian interest. The question is very simple: whether China's entry as an observer in SAARC be in Indian interest.
China's entry into SAARC, it also have to look into the intentions. Okay, so one can be even entering the organization to dilute the whole point of the organization. Otherwise, well, currently what is happening is, frankly speaking, India's neighboring countries are benefiting from the trade that China is putting into the country. So into the region. Okay, so in terms of India's not doing anything, it will not be of interest, because again it's just increasing China's leverage in the organization.
So what had happened that in the recent past, SAARC observership has been given to a number of countries. It is not only to China, they also have made Russia as an observer. They have made South Korea as an observer. So in that context, SAARC also has been working in a very different mode. Not only to provide the platform to China, but also to other countries, to manage China in the region. Very number of things have happened in SAARC. But obviously, India has been restricted. China's entry into SAARC as a full-fledged member.
What do you suggest India should do to counter, China's growing influence? Because obviously we also want to maintain our influence in the region. So what steps do you suggest that India should take?
One, from what is noticed, India has been playing a very reactive role. First of all, I think India should focus on its policy with its neighborhood. Okay, and one area India can put in is infrastructure development and trade. These are the two main areas India can get in, because like I said, the other areas which benefit China is one, arms transfer, military transfer, and the other is their foreign models. It's more to do with the political system. So India has to step down and contribute more in these countries without necessarily looking at the benefits it's going to be. But because as long as it's going to have a neighborhood which does not trust the country, to a large extent India is going to be bound within the region. So I personally feel first it has to contribute without really basically practice the